Hey students, this is Coach Holiday, and today we're going to look at writing the equation of a linear equation in standard form. Quick review, if you learn, remember we've learned two ways to write the equation of a line. The first one is point slope, and that's beneficial if you have a point and a slope. The second way is slope intercept. That's beneficial if you have the slope and the y-intercept. Today the third way we're going to look at writing the equation of a line, and the final way is through the standard form. Alright, now let's go ahead and get started on what standard form is. Alright, standard form of an equation just looks like this: ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are real numbers and a is positive. A is just the coefficient of the x term. So if you notice, we want to have the x and y term on the same side of the equals and then some constant over on the other side. Okay, so let's look at how we do this. So the first example says we want to rewrite the equation y equals 3x plus 2 in standard form. So what I want to do is I'm going to draw my little line there, and I want to get the x part and the y term on the same side of the equal. And the way I do that is just by adding or subtracting. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. When I do that, it gives me negative 3x. I'm going to write the x part first because of ax plus by. So negative 3x plus y equals, and I have 2 left over here. Now the problem I have is that a is negative. So what I have to do is I have to either multiply or divide everything by that negative. So if I divide everything by negative 1, in the problem, negative 3x divided by negative 1 makes positive 3x. Positive y divided by negative 1 makes negative y. And 2 divided by negative 1 makes negative 2. And now I've got this written in ax plus by equals c form. My 3 is my a. If I put a number in front of the y, I can just put a 1 there, so my b is negative 1, and then my c is negative 2. Alright, and that's the equation written in standard form. I had it written in slope-intercept form, and now it's written in standard form. Right now I want to look at graphing an equation that's written in standard form. Alright, so I want to remember a couple things. The first thing is I remember that an intercept is the point where the line crosses an axis. If my line, wherever my line crosses an axis, the y-axis or the x-axis, that's what we call an intercept. We also want to remember that any point on the y-axis has an x-coordinate of 0. So any point I pick on the y-axis, the x value is 0. And any point on the x-axis has a y-coordinate of 0. So any point I pick on this x-axis, the y is 0. So to find the y-intercept, I want to find out what y is when x is 0. So I'm going to simply substitute zero in for y, and then solve the equation for y. To find the x-intercept, where the line crosses the x-axis, since the y value is 0, I'm going to substitute zero in for y. I then made a little mistake here. On the y-intercept, I'm going to substitute 0 in for x, because on the y-axis every x is the same. So I'll substitute in 0 in for x. Every value of x on the y-axis is 0. So substitute 0 in for x. Alright, so let's look at this example number 2. We're going to graph the linear equation x minus 2y equals negative 4. Since it's written in ax plus by equals c form, I'm going to use intercepts to graph. Easy as that. So to find my y-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. So I get 0 minus 2y equals negative 4. So that's just negative 2y equals negative 4. If I divide both sides by negative 2, I get y equals positive 2. So my y-intercept, when x is 0, y is positive 2. So I'll go ahead and put a point there on my graph. Now let's find the x-intercept. For the x-intercept, we're going to substitute 0 in for y. So I'm going to have x minus 2 times the y is 0 equals negative 4. Now negative 2 times 0, that just goes away, so I have x equals negative 4. So I go on my x-axis and go to negative 4, and I put a point. And then I just take my line and draw it through those 2 points. Make sure you use a straight edge. Alright, my program won't let me use a straight edge, so make sure you use a straight edge. Okay? Alright, last example we're going to do is we're just going to write the equation in standard form of the line that passes through negative 3, 7 and has a slope of 2/3. So what I want to remember is that if I have a point and a slope, then using point-slope form is the best way to write the equation. Remember, point-slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So let's plug in what we know. The negative 3 is our x1, the 7 is our y1, and the slope 2/3 is our m. So let's plug in what we know. I have y minus 7 equals m is 2/3, times x minus negative 3, which is going to make it plus 3. Alright, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to solve this thing and then work on getting my x's and my y's on the same side. So the first thing to do to solve it is I'm going to distribute that 2/3 in there, and I get y minus 7 equals 2/3 x plus, now 2/3 times 3, you can use your calculator, that's just going to give you 6/3, which is 2. So I'm going to write this over here. Y minus 7 equals 2/3 x plus 2. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to move this minus 7 by adding 7 to both sides. And those cancel, and I get y equals 2/3 x plus 9. And now I want to move the 2/3 x over to the left side like I did above. So to do that, I subtract 2/3 x on both sides. And that gives me negative 2/3 x plus y equals 9. My last step is I want a to be a whole number, and I want it to be positive. So if you remember back a few weeks ago when we had fractions, if I multiply the whole fraction or the whole problem by the denominator of that fraction, then that will get rid of the fractions. So what I get is when I multiply 3 times negative 2/3, I just get negative 2x. But I still have the negative, so how could I get rid of the negative? If I multiplied it by a negative also, that would make that a positive x. And I multiplied that there. Now I'm going to multiply negative 3 times y and get negative 3y. And my negative 3 times 9 get negative 27. And that's the equation written in standard form. Okay? You're going to get some practice on this in class, so don't stress out too much about that problem. I know it's a lot of work, maybe a little confusing, but you'll get a hold of this and you'll master it by the time we're done.